This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore. Since day one, Donald Trump has been perverting the office of the President of the United States, bending not only the parameters of norms of the institution of the presidency, but contravening the dignity of the office altogether. He has used his high office to enrich himself, to obstruct justice in cases involving himself and his bootlicking underlings, and to attempt to secure for himself another term in office by simultaneously weakening the infrastructure of our democratic processes, among many, many other appalling actions. As I've been predicting, the shift in public opinion related to favoring the impeachment and removal of Donald Trump from office has taken some time. And even though I expected it to be slow going, it still frustrated me. Well, this week we've seen substantial movement on that front. A poll released yesterday by Quinnipiac found that a full 55% of respondents approve of the impeachment inquiry, while a dwindling 43% opposed it. Last week, those numbers were 51% to 45%. But the numbers representing the group that I believe are the most critical in the public opinion sphere were also the ones that saw the most dramatic movement. You see, support for Donald Trump's impeachment among independents jumped 8 points in a single week. And of course, accompanying these numbers are those which indicate that Donald Trump's approval rating is rapidly and maybe irreparably sinking as well. For the first time since the impeachment inquiry began, Trump's approval ratings dipped to less than 40%, with only 38% approving of his performance, with 58% disapproving. Almost 60% of America disapproves of Donald Trump's performance. And here is what is very well fueling the rapid change related to how Americans feel about impeaching and removing this clear and present danger from office. It is a combination of who is coming to the defense of Donald Trump and those who seem to be running in the other direction. First, let's talk about those coming to Trump's defense, or the "with friends like these, who needs enemies" group. The dingbats who are so daft that they think they're doing a bang-up job of defending Donny Boy, when in reality they are torpedoing his already unlikely chances of getting out of this. People like the former acting Attorney General and dildo with ears, Matt Whitaker. You see, Whitaker went on Fox News the other night with Laura Ingraham to make possibly the dumbest defense of Trump yet. Not that Donald Trump is a righteous man who loves his country and who honors the Constitution and who has great reverence for the office of the presidency of the United States. No. Hell, he didn't even try to say that Donald Trump was innocent of the things he's being accused. Nope. Kingpin here instead effectively admitted that Donald Trump has abused his power. But that's not against the law to do so.
Well, and it's corrosive, and yet those who are perpetrating it cast themselves as the white knights in this. They're saving the republic from the man whose policies they disagree with so vehemently, and whose tone and whose demeanor they have utter disdain for. I really go back to that. They never saw him as legitimate. The insurance policy of Peter Strzok failed. Mueller failed. And now they're on to the next thing.
Well, and he's remember these global elitists, these careerists have made promises to and have set in place a world establishment that operated a certain way. And President Trump has asked questions like, why do we do this way? Why don't people pay? Why doesn't Germany and France, why don't they pay 2% into NATO? And these kind of questions, which again has completely upset the apple cart, he is being punished for this. And again, I'm a former prosecutor, and what I know is this is a perfect time for a preliminary hearing where you would say, show us your evidence. What evidence of a crime do you have? I mean, the Constitution, sort of abuse of power is not a crime. Let's fundamentally boil it down to, the Constitution is very clear that this has to be some pretty egregious behavior.
Well, one, Matt Whitaker, impeachment isn't a criminal process. And two, abuse of power most certainly is impeachable. Let us not forget that the articles of impeachment against Bill Clinton laid out in detail gross abuse of his presidential powers. And more notably, there were 3 articles of impeachment voted out of committee against Richard Nixon. 3 articles of impeachment which were heading to full House vote before Nixon resigned instead. Those were Article 1, obstruction of justice, Article 3, contempt of Congress, and, look at this. What do you suppose Article 2 was? Well, if you guessed abuse of power, you would be correct. And Article 2 against Richard Nixon was the one that received the most votes out of committee. It passed on a 28-10 vote. And the introduction of the article said, using the powers of the office of President of the United States, Richard Nixon, in violation of his constitutional oath, faithfully to execute the office of President of the United States and to the best of his ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in disregard of his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, has repeatedly engaged in conduct violating the constitutional rights of citizens, impairing the due and proper administration of justice in the conduct of lawful inquiries, of contravening the law of governing agencies of the executive branch and the purposes of these agencies. In fact, listen to Larry Hogan, a once member of that very committee and member of Nixon's own party, a Republican who put his country before his politics. Listen to what he had to say about Nixon's abuses of power.
The fact is, and the thing that's so appalling to me, is that the president, when this whole idea was suggested to him, didn't in righteous indignation rise up and say, get out of here, you're in the office of the President of the United States. How can you talk about blackmail and bribery and keeping witnesses silent? This is the presidency of the United States. And throw them out of his office and pick up the phone and call the Department of Justice and tell them there's an obstruction of justice going on. Someone's trying to buy the silence of a witness. But my president didn't do that. He sat there and he worked and worked to try to cover this thing up so it wouldn't come to light.
That very question should be asked by every American about Donald Trump. Why didn't the president rise up in righteous indignation and say, get out of here? You're in the office of the President of the United States. How could there be talk of bribery and extortion and quid pro quos? This is the presidency of the United States of America. Well, it's really simple. The reason Donald Trump didn't say that or throw anybody out of his office was because he himself was the one who was conceiving of and executing this sinister plot against our democracy. And there would have been no one to call at the Department of Justice because he had enlisted their help in this conspiracy as well with his Attorney General, Bill Barr. So it is because of allies like Matt Whitaker, allies who admit to Donald Trump's abuse of powers, that are driving up the percentage of Americans all over the nation who approve of the impeachment and removal of Donald Trump from office. The other category might be more damaging and consequential, though. And this isn't about a rise in the number of independents who now support impeachment. The other category speaks to what I have been talking about for months. This is concerning the cracks that are beginning to develop in the Republican wall of complicity. You see, Republican politicians, they're not leaders. They are followers. They're not courageous. They're cowards. They need instruction. They need orders. And it is subtle moves like the one Mitch McConnell made yesterday that will be seen by history as the beginning of the end for Donald Trump. You see, a few days ago, the same day that Donald Trump publicly invited Ukraine and China to interfere in our democracy, he also claimed that he had spoken to Mitch McConnell on the phone about his call with the Ukrainian president, and that Mitch McConnell had categorized the transcript summary of the call as the most innocent call he's read.
No, but I read Mitch McConnell's statement yesterday, and he read my phone call. And as you know, he put out a statement that said that was the most innocent phone call he's read. And I spoke to him about it, too. He read my phone call with the president of Ukraine, Mitch McConnell. He said, that was the most innocent phone call that I've read. I mean, give me a break.
Well, it should come as no surprise to anyone that Donald Trump was lying. Because a couple of days ago, when asked about this purported conversation with Donald Trump about the Ukrainian quid pro quo, Mitch McConnell denied that it had even ever happened at all.
The president has said that you told him that his phone call with the Ukrainian president was perfect and innocent. Do you believe that the president has handled this Ukrainian situation perfectly?
We've not had any conversations on that subject.
So he was lying about that?
You'll have to ask him. I don't recall any conversations with the president about that phone call.
Now, this may seem pedestrian enough, innocent enough, but it is anything but. Mitch McConnell is a seasoned, experienced, shrewd political operator, maybe more than any other politician in any of our lifetimes. This wasn't a slip-up. He could have easily dodged the question or refused to answer or given the reporter a non-answer answer. He didn't, though. He flatly denied that the conversation took place and that he had ever said that he had categorized the quid pro quo as innocent. And this does a few different things. First, it signals to Republicans that their leader is creating some distance between himself and Donald Trump, which in turn gives them permission to do the same for themselves. It also indicates to the American people and Republicans in Congress that Donald Trump's phone call with Ukraine wasn't innocent. Because if it were, Mitch McConnell would have said so. And third, that fewer and fewer members of Congress are going to be perpetually supportive of Donald Trump throughout this process. Remember this moment because it was a giant one in the saga of the impeachment and removal of Donald Trump. Expect from this moment on to see more and more Republicans begin to fidget and squirm as they slowly but surely distance themselves from the dangerous criminal antics of Donald Trump. Remember that a lot of people will be totally against impeachment until the moment they're not. And mark my words, from this day on, albeit slowly, more and more of our elected officials who have a literal vote in this matter will begin to publicly, albeit subtly, voice their opposition to Donald Trump and his lawlessness, which will ultimately lead us to the numbers we need to impeach and remove Donald Trump from the office of the President of the United States.